Alright, here we go. Last one.
What's shaking? My name's Cam. Welcome back to another video. Damn it. It looks like I'm at that stage in November where my mustache is officially at its most seedy. That's a bummer, but it is what it is. If you want to help me fight to prevent suicide during the month of November and you have a few dollars to spare, I'll leave a link to my Movember page in the description below. So I did a live stream a little while ago talking about writing and my YouTube channel, NaNoWriMo, other intellectual stuff.
What's that dance he does in Spider-Man 3? I probably shouldn't be doing this on a live stream. I'm going to embarrass myself. How does he do it again? He goes... That's just a little treat. That's a little taste of what you're in for.
Someone in the stream asked me what I thought about the idea that writer's block doesn't exist. Apparently they brought it up because Meg from iWriterly had recently done a video talking about exactly that. And I'll be honest, the question kind of threw me off. It hadn't even crossed my peanut mind before that there's people out there that think writer's block doesn't exist. So I wasn't too sure how to even respond. But I was interested, my curiosity was piqued. So I watched Meg's video, and then I actually went and watched Alexa Donne's video as well, because she did a video about writer's block. And I gave it a lot of thought. I really did. I considered
I've seen those
all
videos,
of the points that both Meg and Alexa made in their videos, and
so I don't know what their takes
I think
were
I've come up with some opinions of my own. A lot of interesting points were made in those videos, and I'm not sure if it's necessarily that I disagree, or maybe it's rather that I think of writer's block just a bit differently than they do. It's entirely possible that I just have a very different idea of what writer's block actually is. Either way, I want to give my 2 cents for what it's worth, because I am a very brain man, and I'm wrong. Never. Look, jokes aside, before I get into it, I feel like I should make it clear that while I will be addressing points and responding to points that both Meg and Alexa have made in their videos, this isn't me shading them or calling them out. I know, listen, I know how fun and exciting drama is, especially in these YouTube communities. I know it's exciting, but this video is a beef-free zone. I'm sorry. At most, you could say this is a friendly debate, an exchange of opinions. That's all. And I encourage you to go and watch both Meg and Alexa's videos so that you can get the full picture for yourselves. I'm not saying I'm absolutely right. I rarely am. This is just how I feel. If you disagree with me, that's cool. I want to hear it. Let me know in the comments, or
I'll let you
hell,
know.
make your own video.
I'm making my own video.
Don't be a dick about it. So if you want the short version, I do believe writer's block exists, at least from the angle of the technical definition. To me, writer's block is a pretty widely encompassing thing, and I think that might be the reason that I'm finding myself disagreeing a bit with things that Meg and Alexa have said.
Writer's block doesn't exist. I think if you're feeling stuck and you're not wanting to write a story, or you're not able to figure out where to go next, usually, in my opinion, it's probably because you didn't spend enough time planning where you're going. And even if you're a pantser or you are a gardener, meaning you're a discovery writer.
This is... I don't know what she's going to say, but the fact that she's preempting it with, you know, even if you're a pantser, all the other things I've ever heard from her, and from a lot of the writers that are on AuthorTube, they are hardcore planners. They don't know what pantsing is. They don't know. They don't understand it. And I say the same thing about planner. Like I have tried to plot my book beforehand. I plot a little bit of my book. I know what my ending is going to be. I have a general sense of where I'm going with things. So I have kind of like an end goal that I know, you know, I know where the goal line is, basically. But how I'm getting there is up in the air. And I cannot for the life of me understand people who need to plot things out. It just strips all the fun from me. I have no fun plotting things out and then basically taking those notes and then writing them, because I'm just not having fun. I'm just basically taking the words that I already wrote and I'm making it longer. So now I'm just kind of I'm just basically extrapolating more of what I've already imagined. You know, it's not fun for me. They know what it is. They don't respect it. Yeah, maybe it's that. Maybe it's that. But I don't know if they know what it really is. I don't know if they can really, because they're such hardcore plotters. I don't know if they can really understand what it's like to be a pantser. And yeah, I do kind of sometimes get the feeling that they really don't respect it at all.
Writer. You write and you figure out the story as you're going. You don't plan the story in advance. I would argue that if you're pantsing hardcore, maybe you just got lost and you don't know where you're going, and then you do actually need to give yourself even a vague roadmap for where the story or the scene or the chapter is headed.
You'll find links to the videos that I'm responding to in the description, of course. So in Meg's video, she says that she believes writer's block is a myth. Due to the fact, normally at least, that it's due to a lack of thorough planning. And to be clear, writers becoming stuck because they didn't spend enough time planning or thinking about the narrative arc of the story, it's totally a thing. I agree with that. That's a regular Wednesday for me, my dude. However, to me, that seems like we're talking more about a solution to writer's block rather than if it exists or not. In looking into this whole conversation, this discussion, this controversial opinion, if you want to put it that way, not just on YouTube but on forums as well, most of the examples I see of writer's block not existing is just lists of possible fixes to that problem. You can avoid dehydration by drinking water, but that doesn't mean dehydration doesn't exist.
It's a myth.
I know
It
that's
never
an odd
happened.
metaphor. I know that's an odd metaphor, but I'm just trying
It's a
to
really good
illustrate
metaphor,
a very
though.
specific point
That's actually a
very
very good
clearly.
metaphor.
If you find that
to
pantsing
prove
isn't
your
working
point.
for you, doing some planning may very well avoid getting
Man,
stuck.
it makes me thirsty.
I just don't think that necessarily means that writer's block doesn't exist, or I don't think it at least means that we can say writer's block is a myth. Meg also mentions a time that a personal tragedy impacted her ability to get some writing done.
I found that I simply could not write. And it wasn't
What is this
writer's block.
camera
It was
angle?
the
What
fact
the
that I was
what the
mourning
heck?
and dealing with kind of going through the emotions of mourning this person.
And I actually agree wholeheartedly in that instance that would be considered mourning rather than writer's block. But also I think that kind of supports my point that we're really just talking about writer's block being something different rather than not existing at all or simply being a myth. Having your ability to write be affected by serious things that are out of your control, like health, both physical and mental, resources, and even time, isn't really what I would consider writer's block, but maybe that's like a subjective, personal thing. That's just kind of separate to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but to me, writer's block is more of a creative hurdle, being stuck at a certain point in the story or becoming disenfranchised with your ability as a writer. That's not me saying mental factors don't play a part. They absolutely do, and in fact, in most cases, that's what's happening. I think most often the reason writers hit a wall is because they start to feel overwhelmed or they start to lack faith in themselves. Scientifically speaking, most writer's block is actually due to a lack of blood flow to the frontal lobe. Something you might be able to fix by simply doing a little bit of exercise before you sit down to write. There's also a lack of sleep, there's boredom, seasonal and social depression. The feeling of being stuck in the same physical location for long periods of time can have a drastic impact on your writing. There are ways to overcome or at least combat those barriers of self-doubt, etc. But I think that boiling it down to writer's block is a myth because there are ways to beat it is a bit of an issue in itself. I'll explain why, but this is a really great time to bring Alexa's points into the discussion.
The concept of writer's block and the way that people use it as an excuse for not writing is not real. Why? Because professional writers don't get writer's block. We can't get writer's block. Professional writers, serious writers even, you can't use writer's block as an excuse to write, meaning you can't always wait for inspiration to write. You can't wait for perfect creative moods to write. You learn to write as a habit. You learn to push through blocks and barriers. Thus, writer's block, as we kind of treat it in culture, especially in writer's culture, is not real. However, mental blocks in writing are 100% real. Creative blocks in writing are 100% real. And you're like, wait, but you just said. So separate writer's block as a concept from these other things. I'm feeling lazy versus I just need a good idea versus I am having a legitimate mental health block / crisis and I need to self-care and take a break from writing, because they are very, very different.
So what I believe Alexa is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, Alexa, if you happen to be watching this, is that writer's block doesn't exist in the way that people seem to think it does. Now this is an angle that fascinates me because I think this adds the nuance needed to a topic like this. I don't want to sound harsh, but writer's block can be and is a lot of the time simply used as an excuse for people who find themselves stuck. Hell, I've done it heaps of times. I'm sure I'll do it later this week. I don't think it's our fault necessarily, simply because I think it's more of a subconscious thing. But if you can just go, well, I guess I've got writer's block. What can you do?
Oh, shucks.
And use that as a reason to avoid your project, that's an issue. I have spoken to people who think that writer's block is just this cosmic thing that just happens whether you like it or not. And that's just not always the case. Now, with all that said, that unfortunately does bring us back around full circle, back to the idea that we might just be talking about solutions to writer's block, or maybe how people perceive it, rather than if it exists or not. I don't want to argue the semantics or anything. I know that's super obnoxious. I'm not about to pull out the dictionary definition like some kind of tool. Hear me out though. I think that saying writer's block doesn't exist because there are solutions to it, or maybe because people have the wrong mindset, is just a bit dismissive to how all-encompassing that term writer's block can be. See, the problem I think saying writer's block is a myth causes is that it gives the impression we're saying, just try harder, bro. It seems like we're suggesting that if writer's block does exist, it comes down to one of two things. One, you're not in the right place mentally to be doing any writing at all. Or two, you're just not trying hard enough. Again, maybe I'm just completely misunderstanding, but those two definitions just aren't what writer's block is to me. That's just an ultimatum I can't really relate to. You know? I've had certain times where I've had to take a little bit of time off from writing just because, quite simply, the next part of the story just wasn't coming to me. No matter how hard I try, and I know it's a thing that you're just meant to get the bad writing out and just power through it, but I just don't think it's always as simple as that. Sometimes it's like a certain fatigue that doesn't even have anything to do with where I am mentally. It's just something that happens, is all I'm saying. Let me know if that ever happens to you. But to go back to Alexa's video and the point she made, and I think most importantly, the main point I think she was trying to make, is that you cannot just expect inspiration to come to you. 99% of the time, you need to put your ass in the seat and put the work in. Whether you like it or not, you should not be confusing the desire to procrastinate with writer's block. Those aren't the same thing, and you only have yourself to blame if you do that. It's obvious to me that that was the main message of Alexa's whole video, and I agree with that.
Inspiration is for people who don't finish books. That is if you wait for it to come to you. If you treat inspiration, especially as it relates to that concept of writer's block, as this nebulous magical thing that just descends on you and allows you to be creative. No, find the inspiration. Make the inspiration come to you. Do something in that writing session to excite you about what you're writing, and then the inspiration will come.
Here's the really tricky part with talking about writing, and I'm sure Alexa would agree. It's such a subjective and personal experience from person to person. Yes, most times you do have to sit down and make yourself write when your mind is screaming at you to do anything else. I've spoken in plenty of videos about how great I think brainstorming is for creativity and for getting yourself through a bit of writer's block. Here's the thing though, more times than I can count, taking just a few days off from writing has helped me just as much as forcing myself to get writing done. It just happens. Sometimes you need a break, and that doesn't always have to mean that you're in a bad headspace.
Writer's block is the big boogeyman in writing circles, and it's useful for new writers to hear what other writers say about it, because really, writing is this weird thing where you can't learn to write except by practicing on your own. And this goes for a lot of things, I'm sure, but it's really hard to mentor people in writing other than to say, well, go try out a bunch of stuff and see what works, because writers are all so different and individual, right?
There can be 100 different causes. Some you can solve easily.
We're so used to having like a coach teach us how to play a sport where there really is more so a right or wrong way in doing it. Like how to run. There is like a better way to run than what you're probably used to doing. There's a better way to, you know, shoot the ball into the basket than what you are probably used to doing. So like having a coach tell us how to do those things it's much more finite than when you get into arts. And when you're dealing with writing, you can have a writing coach, but their style might not be your style, and then their coaching might not be so helpful.
Some you can't, but it still makes sense to me personally that we give a name to the symptom, and that name just happens to be writer's block. I really didn't expect it, but in typing up the points for this video, I realized that writer's block is one of the most complicated topics I have ever discussed on this channel before. There's a lot of nuance and complexity to my opinions, but I'm sure there also is for Alexa's and Meg's as well. This video wasn't me correcting anyone, it wasn't me saying I'm right, they're wrong. It's just an exchange of opinions, like I said. And now it's your turn. What do you think? Thanks for watching.
I'll tell you what I think. So, for me, when it comes to writer's block, I would agree with Alexa's point of view that a lot of people use it as a crutch or as an excuse. And really what they're experiencing is writer's avoidance. They are, you know, maybe they have a plot hole that they need to correct, but they can't really figure out how to do it yet because it's just a puzzle that they need to sit down and work out, and they don't want, maybe they're afraid of failure in doing so, that they're worried that this plot hole is going to be unfixable. So if they don't try, then it could potentially still be fixable. They just haven't tried yet. But if they try and fail, then it becomes where it is, okay, it's not fixable. I can't fix this plot hole, and now my book is ruined. And also too, just the baseline work, just sitting down and writing out those words. You know, sometimes I have found myself really reluctant to sit down and write when I've done framework on a scene where I'm like, okay, they do this, and then they do this, and then I keep going because I want to get to this other scene that I'm trying to write towards. So I frame this one. But now I need to come back to this, and I need to actually, you know, beef it up. I need to make it to where it's, you know, actually worthwhile. And I really don't want to do it because I already wrote just like the thoughts down, and I really don't want to have to sit there and do the actual real work of writing good writing. So, and that's probably why I don't like to plot either. Is because basically that's what you're doing. That's what I do when I plot things. Is I basically write a frame, and then I have to go back and I have to actually fill out that frame, and I've kind of already done the fun part of discovery. So that's probably why I don't really like plotting. But a lot of times I think that people say I have writer's block as a way to kind of avoid the harder discussion of like what's really getting in the way, right? Because what's really getting in the way could just be, you know, I'm having a hard time coming up with a plot device to get out of the certain situation I'm in. I'm having a hard time finding the right prose. You know, there's different reasons on that level, but there are deeper levels where it's like I'm not feeling well, like I'm not in that mental headspace. And rather than tell someone like, you know, I really feel like I shouldn't be alive right now, is not a topic that you want to get into. So you just go, I'm just having some writer's block, you know, I just whatever, you know, not a big deal. And you don't want to cross that threshold with that person about how terrible you really are feeling, right? And that's an extreme example, but that's, you know, whatever level that it is that you might be on, where you just don't feel like writing because of some sort of mental issue, because some sort of depression angle, right? I think that if you're looking at it like that, where you're like, well, look, that's not really writer's block, that's depression. You know, you can't go to the doctor and be like, Doc, I've got a really bad case of writer's block. And the doctor goes, oh, okay, well, I can just prescribe you some whatever this, and you'll be writing in no time. Don't worry, right? they can't do that because there's no diagnosis for writer's block, right? The doctor's probably going to ask you like, well, why do you think that you're having writer's block? Like, what do you think's getting you into that position? They might even just say like, well, let me send you to a therapist, and the therapist is the one who's going to be like, okay, well, let's go deeper and find out what's really causing this block in your creative experience, right? So I think writer's block is, how do I put this? I think that writer's block is a symptom of a larger thing, but using writer's block is kind of replacing the actual condition with a symptom of the condition. But you're calling it, that's the condition. Like, oh, I'm not writing. That's the symptom of my condition, which is writer's block. Woe is me, right? When really I have writer's block, which is the symptom of my condition, which is like depression, or I'm having a really hard time figuring out this puzzle that my book is presenting to me, kind of thing. So is it a myth? Is it not real? Well, I think just in the same way that Alexa and Meg Latour both were like, it's not real. There are other blocks. Like, they were just like, writer's block isn't real. There's other blocks. It is kind of like that, where it's, if you just call it what it really is, then yes, their writer's block isn't exactly a real thing. It's these other things that are blocking you from writing, and the other things are the real things, right? If you want to get into those, like he said, that's kind of semantics, right? But writer's block is something that affects people. I think that is the myth. Writer's block does not affect you. It's whatever's affecting you that is presenting itself in numerous ways, one of which being a writer's block.
Watching. Catch ya.
Catch ya. Best outro ever. All right, guys. I'll see you next time. Happy writing.